My name is Sean Owens, and this is an oral defense for DET 600, Bellevue University ISIS program, Professor Dr. Matthew Croston. The title of this piece is China's Nuclear Strategy and Deterrence Policy. In this piece, we will look at the current state of China's nuclear deterrence strategy and policy. We will identify and evaluate the threats facing China that drive this particular strategy and philosophy. We will compare China's strategy with the deterrence policies of Russia, who face similar type threats. We will then look at the academic research and prescriptions related to the future of China's nuclear strategy and deterrence model. And finally, we'll make policy recommendations to ensure and enhance the future of China's deterrence model. We will look at the 5 primary tenets of China's nuclear strategy and deterrence philosophy. The first and most culturally significant tenet is that of no first use. Not initiating a first strike is the most consistent message to come from China regarding their nuclear policies. It is this tenet that also drives the remaining philosophies. The second is that of security assurance. The security assurance that China offers in relation to its nuclear weapons are twofold. The first is a negative security assurance that China will not use nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear weapon state or in a nuclear-free zone. And the second aspect of that security assurance is a positive assurance that China will come to the aid of any non-nuclear weapon state that is attacked by nuclear weapons. The third, and most controversial, or the component that is getting the most discussions within China, is that of a minimal deterrence strategy. China has always maintained a minimal nuclear arsenal in order to incur an effective, no first-use deterrent model. Fourth, China opposes the deployment outside of its national territories of any nuclear systems or even that of traditional military forces. China not only views this as their own internal philosophy, but they also oppose the use of placing nuclear weapons under allies or nuclear umbrellas and allies such as the United States and NATO do in Europe. And the fifth tenet is that China has continually emphasized and campaigned for the complete prohibition of nuclear arms since detonating its first nuclear weapon. When we can categorize the deterrence philosophy of China, we can categorize it as strategic versus operational and tactical. China solely uses its nuclear arsenal and strategy to defend its national security. It does not intend or does not currently intend for its nuclear weapons arsenal to be operational or tactical uses in traditional or theater warfare. This is a retaliatory type of deterrence strategy only to be used when nuclear weapons are used against it. It's central versus extended, and it's a minimum versus a limited or maximum deterrence strategy, meaning that the weapons are not viewed as offensive or components of limited nuclear war that can make their deterrence strategy a non-first use strategy. However, there are new and changing threats and complexities that apply to China that are causing China for the first time in a number of years to evaluate and consider changing their nuclear strategy and deterrence philosophy. First and foremost is the change from primary nuclear adversary to the United States at what one time was Soviet Russia. Following the Cold War, China's relationship with Russia has warmed. We're even seeing an unprecedented era of military and strategic cooperation between China and Russia, making the United States China's primary nuclear adversary. That conflict with the United States is complicated over the issue of the Taiwan Straits. China has also seen for the first time regional nuclear threats in that we have India and Pakistan, both nuclear capable countries in the same geographical region, in conflict with each other, heightened by the fact that China has allied itself with Pakistan to the point of helping to enable Pakistan with its nuclear weapon capabilities. We also see things like the emerging nuclear weapon states in North Korea and Iran, which add complexities to China's nuclear strategies and are causing evaluation and consideration of evolution of those policies. When we evaluate the effectiveness of China's nuclear strategy and deterrence policy, analysts within China always come back to the point that it's easy to adapt to new threats, meaning that as the threats change and evolve, its policy can remain consistent. However, the question facing China now is yes, that policy can adapt to new threats, but it's an ineffective adaptation to the new threats. For example, can the nuclear weapon capabilities currently within China address the technological capabilities of the United States related to a missile defense system. The primary questions affecting the future of deterrence strategies within China would make it a move from minimum to a limited deterrence. The threats from the United States primarily primarily related to Taiwan, NATO, and that of the technology capabilities within the United States. As mentioned, the missile defense system, which has the ability to render China's nuclear response ineffective, as well as advancements of the United States in technology related to potential first strike weapons being more powerful and effective, and thus leaving China with a smaller or inability to effectively retaliate. There's also the conflict with India, as China and India have historical border issues, and with China aligning itself with Pakistan, another conflict area with India in the region, India has now identified China as its primary nuclear adversary. Newer threats such as nuclear terrorism from rogue or non-state actors are also impacting China's strategies, as well as weapons of mass destruction such as biological and chemical weapons, which some in China are viewing as the most immediate and greatest threat to China's national security. The current nuclear strategy does not address those particular threats. So the forces driving change externally are the advancements in technology and increase in nuclear threats. Internally, the burgeoning economy within China, recently improvements in the economy have allowed for China to take economic resources and apply them toward their nuclear arsenal and weapons for the first time in many years. This has led to internal technology advancements that could lead China to not only modernize their nuclear arsenal, but also effectively change their strategy to address these new threats. When comparing China's policies with that of Russia, who face similar types of threats, we see that there are many dependencies within the two countries, both economic, based upon trade of energy, versus purchasing of weapons and strategy. Both view the United States and NATO as the primary threats, with the missile defense system as the greatest risk to nuclear sovereignty in the area. Both have taken similar approaches to the Middle East, particularly to Iran and their nuclear capabilities. However, the differences between China and Russia and the threats relate to the regional India and Pakistan conflict, whereas China has allied itself with Pakistan, Russia has a long history of relationship with India. So when comparing the threats, the similarities and the difference between the threats facing the two countries, we see a vastly different response in policy. We see that while China maintains its no first use and defensive model, Russia has embraced a more tactical, offensive use of nuclear weapons. Comparing the effectiveness of the two policies, they're very different, but both have been successful in effectively deterring nuclear attacks to date. We're also seeing, as mentioned, unprecedented military cooperation between the two countries, which leads many analysts in the West to wonder if China will adapt its philosophies related to nuclear capabilities to be more aligned or similar to Russia's in the future. The academic research related to China's nuclear strategy focuses on the historical precedents or Chinese philosophies that drive China's no first use defensive philosophy related to nuclear weapons. It also focuses on the new economical capabilities of China to use technology and apply resources to modernize and change their deterrence strategy and their arsenal. And then the majority of the research then focuses on the question of whether or not China should modernize its capabilities and therefore move to a limited form of deterrence strategy in order to take advantage of those new capabilities within their nuclear arsenal. If China chooses not to change its policy regarding nuclear strategy and deterrence, they run the risk of a loss of credible deterrence. Their response may not be effective against new technologies, or it might not be large enough based upon the effectiveness or the increased power of nuclear capabilities from its foes. The retaliation capabilities and mobilization capabilities to deliver those nuclear arsenal are also limited if they do not modernize and change based on new and additional threats which stretch across a large region, China might not be able to tactically respond to multiple threats. We also have the new threats such as terrorism and weapons of mass destruction, such as chemical and biological weapons, that China's policy does not currently address. So based on those items, we make policy recommendations that 1, China should modernize its arsenal and capabilities in order to address the technological advancements of its foes, take advantage of the technological advancements within its own country, and to address the additional and new changes within threats facing China. They should also move from a minimum to a limited deterrent strategy. That way they could take advantage of the operational and tactical components of nuclear arsenal to not only have an effective but an expanded deterrent strategy against these threats. Recommending that any country change its deterrent strategy and nuclear philosophy is quite challenging. When those strategies and philosophies are based on hundreds of years of cultural significance, such as they are in China, it becomes even more challenging. However, these are considerations that China must make in order to maintain and enhance its deterrence credibility. Thank you.